Hi, I'm Claire,
And I'm Chaya.
and today we are filming a segment for Celebrity Chat on Beyonce. So I guess to get started, Chaya, when you think of Beyonce, what first comes to mind?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is obviously Lemonade and the impact that it has had globally last year. And I think it all culminated with the Grammy Awards, where the conversation about Beyonce and African American culture really started to flow over social media. So, what did you think of that? What did you think of the impact of the album itself and what happened after the Grammy
I
Awards?
think the impact of the album is sort of it's hard to start at like one point. Maybe we can start with like a theme and we can look
So
at,
many things, right?
I think for me what stood out, particularly in terms of when we teach in class, at CTI, is obviously this topic of intersectionality and how I think when we look at Lemonade, the way Beyonce has connected her narrative and her story to that of Black women, and in particular, African American women, and sort of shown us how Black love and racism and feminism and motherhood and maternity and all these things are sort of connected in a really complicated way that can sort of be difficult to explain. So for me, it was a very strong album, and obviously we've seen, from the Grammys onwards, we've seen like the ripple effect of
Exactly.
the themes that came through in that album,
Yeah.
in a deeper way. So maybe do you want to talk a little bit about her portrayal of Black women, and we can go on that topic.
And I mean, as you've said, I really got the sense of how passionate people were about the album after the Grammy Awards, and I started to read more about it in terms of her activism. Is it an activist album? And basically talking about black female bodies, for example, how she embodies, how she brings forward the diversity of black female bodies in literature, in pop culture, for example. This is one thing that I was struck by it when I watched Lemonade, the album. The diversity of black women, the different portrayals of black women that you have in this album. Last year, I was hearing so many things about black people's hair, for example, and how in South Africa, for example, there was a school that banned South African girls from wearing their natural hairstyle.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and they were banned from actually wearing their natural hairstyle, wearing the afro, and suddenly these conversations, they started to become more visible. And I think Lemonade and the discussions around Lemonade really made those different issues much more visible over social media. So yeah, in this sense, I mean, there are so many things to discuss with regards to how black females are represented in this album, in terms of their sexuality, in terms of their history, in terms of their place on the social scene itself in America. The whole idea of motherhood, for example.
Yeah.
I think you were talking about this earlier.
Yeah, when we saw the Grammy performance where Beyonce is like unapologetically pregnant. We see her with that visual with her belly, with the twins. Obviously, she's pregnant at the moment, and she's not trying to cover that up as well. In fact, it's like she sort of gets power from representing herself. And obviously, pregnancy in general and the female form in such a powerful way and I think that's interesting. She says something in her Grammy speech. She says, she wanted to confront images that make us uncomfortable.
Exactly.
And that really struck me because when you look at her work, she is presenting, as you said, very diverse black women throughout the Lemonade album. Young, old, frizzy hair, afro hair, the braids, different styles of dress that are not just from our, generation right now, but from generations, rooted in Southern history. In Daddy Lessons, she wears this really sort of like old, like mid, 15th century sort of style outfit to sort of, I think, represent and take us visually into, her connection to her roots and, and obviously we've seen that in her Grammys performance as well, with the different deities and the different goddesses. That you know a lot more about that. What's the goddesses she's representing in the Grammys performance?
Well, there are some African African goddesses, and there's the Hindu goddess Kali.
Yeah.
So the African goddesses, I think one is the Mami Wata, who's the goddess
Oshan
of
as well, I think,
water.
was the other one.
Oshan,
Yeah.
goddess of water and goddess of maritime. What is it? The maritime
something like that,
slave trade or something, which is
Yeah.
supposed to represent the maritime slave trade. But basically, they are goddesses. Mami Wata is the goddess of water, and then you've got the Kali, Hindu goddess Kali,
Yeah.
and Kali is this very powerful goddess who usually symbolizes victory over evil and how she destroys demons, for example. And I think this idea of taking power over her image and the symbolisms attached to the black female body, this is something that she really achieves with this album and the Grammy performance as well.
I think that's what's interesting is Beyonce's iconicity, her ability to represent multiple sort of people or multiple. She's transnational. She doesn't have a border to herself. You know, she can represent black women. She can represent women in general because she has been at the forefront of sort of a lot of discussions around feminism, not just on this album, but on previous albums. She represents African Americans, not just African American women, but African Americans, because something that comes through in the Lemonade album is the mothers of those young black men who were shot, and then there's also obviously connections to police brutality, and obviously injustice at large, but particularly for the black community. So I think, her ability to represent so many different types of people, and as I said earlier, sort of connect her narrative, her story. We have themes of infidelity and themes of pain and suffering, but also connect that with something much larger than herself is incredibly powerful in this album. And I think we've seen the impact of the album, not just in the Grammy Awards that she won, not just in pop culture, but also in the conversations that have started. We had hashtag boycott Beyonce after Formation was released. People thinking that she was taking sort of shots at police. And I think she, was in an interview and she said something like, police brutality and injustice are two very separate things. Because, you have that beautiful image in Formation where you see, stop shooting us, on the wall. Exactly. And you see the police officers sort of lined up and a boy is dancing in front of them. So it's very like, in the face of hate or violence, she's, presenting us with this visual of
an alternative
peace
to violence, yes.
Yeah, exactly, an alternative to violence in a way as well. So it's how she sort of represented all of these things visually. It's not just the music and the themes that come through in the music, but the way the visuals weave in sort of all these other layers to the story, which is really amazing.
The whole album has a deep connection to history, and a deep connection to African American history. Earlier we were talking about it, and you were mentioning about the Black Panthers and how I think it was
we saw the Super Bowl performance.
So you could see that. We were talking about, historically speaking, black female bodies and the place that black women have had in the American political, the whole civil rights movement, etc. In terms of the place that black female bodies have had, they've always been called, black female bodies as part of literature has been called. They have been called receptacles of violence. They are the receptacle of violence. They are the receptacles of oppression, receptacles of sexual violence as well. And with this album, she wants to show the violence. She wants to show the oppression, but at the same time, she's giving voice. She's taking the power, and in her voice, she's telling her story and the stories of so many voiceless women as well. So this is why I think many African American women connected with the album so much, because it was retelling their story in their own voices, and giving an alternative as well to how black women are represented as part of the American media.
Pop culture in general, I guess. We can look at Beyonce early on in her career, from Destiny's Child onwards, and we can look at this certain whitewashing of Beyonce. I mean, she's African American. We know that now. It was quite funny because we saw this album dropped, and we saw SNL did a spoof on like the day Beyonce turned black, and all of these sort of parodies of the idea that Beyonce prior to this album has never really acknowledged her African American history, and to a certain extent has been whitewashed, you know, on magazine covers as, you know, before and after pics where she's much lighter in her skin tone. She's blonde, but she's blonder.
Yeah.
And that portrayal of her not as an African American, but as something, I guess, that is more relatable to other audiences to try and sell music.
To more mainstream audiences.
Yes, exactly.
Straightening her hair, for example, for a number of years. I can remember with her blonde hair, straight hair.
Yeah.
During Destiny's Child.
Yeah.
During these days, I think at some point she used to have braids, but throughout it was really this whitewashed image that she used to have. And I remember on SNL before, when Maya Rudolph was actually spoofing her, the sketches were really about how her whole family, you know, how they are really
Class.
Yeah, they're upper class and you know, very elitist. Very elitist in terms of what they consume and what they talk about. It's about this idea of the elitist and upper class Beyonce was really put forward by SNL, and I think it's quite ironic that they came with this sketch where you know, right after the album,
Beyonce's black. What? She's black,
and she owns it.
And she's like we said before, she's unapologetically black. You know, it's not like, oh hey guys, like, and she sort of, you know, it's like the whole album is very much, and you see a completely different Beyonce from the very first track to the end. She's stripped down. You know, she's in the first scene we see her. She's wearing a hoodie. She's like not made up at all, which is a far, you know, cry from her diva days or you know, single ladies and all that sort of stuff, which we've been used to seeing her sort of style. So from the very first images that we see of her, she's incredibly bare, she's incredibly raw, very stripped down, and from that moment you know, okay, this is different, we haven't seen this before, and she's got something else to say, and then you sort of follow through the album and you see it build, and you see her go through this pain and this suffering and how she connects that to other things, and then at the end we sort of have this finish where there's hope for the future, which I think is a nice way to finish it as well, because of the current, you know, political and so it's you know, I don't think a lot of us have hope at the moment, particularly in the African American community, and I think particularly if you're a woman in America right now, a lot of them probably don't have much hope for what's going to happen.
When the album was released, I think they were in the middle of the electoral.
I think it was early 2016 maybe.
So it was still during the electoral campaign. And she actually, I think she mentioned that she wanted this album, and you know, the way it ends, she wanted this, she wanted it to be this way. She wanted to be this. She wanted to bring this idea of hope for the future, for the future generations. And I think in her acceptance speech for the Grammys, she was also talking about the future and how the need for children to see themselves represented in the media too.
I have that quote here. It's something along the lines of, it's important for me to show images to my children that reflect their beauty, so they can grow up in a world where they look in the mirror and, you know, essentially they'll see themselves. So, you know, providing us with, I guess, different images to what we're used to seeing, and those confronting images, like we said before, you know, where she's very pregnant, you know, all these different diverse black images in terms of hair and dress. It's, you know, getting used to, especially in mainstream media, to see the diversity that exists in real life, and she's presenting that for us.
It's a far cry from her days during you know, Destiny's Child, in terms of how she, basically there was a lot of criticism with regards to how she performs for the male gaze, how she has been performing for the male gaze up till now, and how, you know, whenever she was speaking, for example, Independent Women, the song, the fact that it's about, independent women, but independent only if you are allying with consumerism and capitalism, you know, and allied to capitalism and consumerism, how you can only be free and independent if you buy
if you can buy your way out of it.
Donc, a lot of people have been saying that, a lot of criticism directed towards this very capitalistic feminism that she's kind of calling for. And this whole idea of co-opting feminism.
Which is interesting, because we see in, obviously, Lemonade, she presents a very different attitude towards powerful women.
Definitely,
which is rooted in culture, and it's rooted in, you know, your voice. And, which is quite different to this sort of capitalist, you know, mindset that we have before in terms of feminism and, you know, single ladies, you've got to put a ring on it, or, you know, it's mine, I bought it, and that makes me independent. So it's quite a different side of her that we're seeing. What I thought maybe we could finish on, because I think we've talked about quite a bit, is maybe talking about like maybe why do you think this album came around? I was sort of thinking to myself that, you know, it's been called a love letter to the African American people, or in particular a love letter to African American women. And I wonder if that's sort of been spurred on by her motherhood, in terms of she's now raising, you know, an African American daughter, and she's got twins on the way, and I wonder if it's come from her sense of legacy, and maybe you know, speaking up about issues that she can see around her. I don't know, what do you think about that?
Well, I think that she has reached a status, you know, she has reached a status now where she doesn't have to pretend anymore. Where she can be herself, and where she can, you know, she knows the power of her performance and the power of her voice, basically.
She's reached a point in her career now.
I mean, she's iconic now. She's iconic, and I think this album is a very personal album where she basically wanted to channel out her creativity and made this visual anthem for African American people. You know, removed from any constraints, you know, material, business constraints or whatever, where she just wanted to release her creativity and release her voice again. And yeah, as you said, it is, I believe it's a love letter. And African American people, especially African American women, they received it as a kind of love letter, directed to them and speaking for them, basically. I don't know if I don't know what her intention was, but I think that she knows that she's free from any other constraints that might bind other artists. She can be herself now.
I think what's interesting as well is that with Beyonce, we've always had this perfectly sort of crafted image of her. She's been very controlled about the access the public has to her private life. Her and Jay-Z, you know, were married for a long time, people never knew. And now we've sort of seen this like stripping back of, you know, and sort of an insight into maybe her life. You know, we've got the themes of infidelity coming through, and you know, that was the very topical thing. Did Jay-Z cheat on Beyonce? You know, and then, you know, sort of we got lost, I think, a little bit in the other themes of the album. But I think you like, it's a curtain behind a curtain to a certain extent. Like, we've seen a little bit in, but she's never addressed the infidelity. Nothing's ever come out. It's sort of like, you know, she puts her artwork out, and what you take from it is really what you take from it. So it's always, you know, like another curtain, more questions about the intentions, and you know, it's sort of like a never ending. We could talk about it all day. It's never ending.
And I think the question that remains now is, what is she going to create next?
What's next? How does she top this? Where does she go? I don't think she can go back now to where she. I think she's going to keep going forward with this direction. I don't know. Yeah,
now she's shed like all those, you know, whatever is attached to image and whatever is attached to materialism, etc. It's removed from her person as an artist now. I think as an artist, she's now also known as, or maybe she's kind of viewed as an activist for. She's made that conscious choice, I think, by dropping this album, and you know, everything that's happened since, you know, the Grammys performance could have been something quite different, but the way, you know, she managed to do that with being pregnant and doing everything else, she's kept in the same direction, like full steam ahead with the spiritual, you know, visuals that came through, and even the seat at the table. You know, I think that was a nod to her sister Solange. She released an album which is called A Seat at the Table, I think, and the idea that I guess black people, you know, sort of don't have a seat at the table to a certain extent. It's a whole other topic we could go into. But it's very, again, full of imagery, full of powerful imagery that went again for the Grammys performance. So I think we're just going to keep seeing a lot of these really strong, sort of powerful you know, themes coming through in her work, which is looking forward to it, I guess. Definitely.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for watching Celebrity Chat. I'm Claire.
And I'm Chaya.
See you next time.